Hello, everyone, and welcome to another month of WBA's Compliance Corner. This month is, of course, April, and we will be bringing you some hot topics that we have seen from last month. And we don't have a ton here in April, but enough that we still wanted to make a video and talk to you about what is going on. So the first item is actually just a reminder, so nothing new. And in fact, we talked about this a little bit in our previous month in March, but we wanted to remind you regarding FDIC's Part 328 implementation dates. We also have some withdrawal of agency past guidance and joint statements regarding crypto assets and dollar token activities, just kind of in the realm of crypto-related activities. So we'll talk about that as well. Then we have some changes to the SBA 7A lending program, as well as some FTC updates for the COPPA rule. As with previous videos, we also have links down in the description below. So those items that are marked with an asterisk, you will be able to find a link to some additional information. So make sure to keep that in mind for additional resources and additional reference. All right, so as I mentioned, our first item here from FDIC is not anything new. So everything regarding Part 328 is still in line, but we did want to give you a reminder and just a slight clarification for purposes of understanding the different compliance dates are at play here. So the May 1st required compliance date still applies. May 1st of 2025, I should clarify, is still in effect for most of the changes that FDIC made to Part 328. And what we mean by that is back in 2023, FDIC, of course, issued its final rule amending the sign and advertising requirements. Now, that was originally set for compliance by January of this year, January of 2025, but FDIC then delayed the entire compliance of the Part 328 changes to May 1st of 2025. Now, among those changes include a requirement to display the FDIC official digital sign on certain digital channel pages. So the digital advertising requirements, the digital FDIC official signage. We've talked about these requirements in more detail before, but in short, it generated a lot of questions and some confusion, not just for purposes of implementation, but concern over customer confusion as well. And of course, this rule being all about customers being able to understand those products that are FDIC insured and making sure not to misrepresent those that aren't, it's important that it's met consistently and clearly. And a lot of these questions and confusion as banks have been looking to implement for the May 1st date still remains. So acknowledging this and to account for this, FDIC did delay implementation of the amendments for those requirements, more specifically under Part 328.4 and 328.5 to March 1st of 2026. This we did talk about last month in our last month's video in more detail. But what that includes is the requirement for digital sign on digital channels as mentioned, as well as similar requirements related to ATMs and similar devices. So those are delayed to March 1st of 2026. However, that delay only applies to those parts. Again, 328.4 and 328.5. For all other changes, for all the other amendments, compliance is still required for May 1st of 2025. That includes, as you can see on the slide here, display for the official FDIC sign on bank premises, the where deposits are received section, signage that's related to offering non-deposit products, and the separation of areas when accepting non-deposit products. That also includes the additional safeguards. If you recall that FDIC wanted to put in some safeguards to avoid customer confusion as well regarding the permissible use of FDIC insured and prohibition against using it in ads for non-deposit products. So again, nothing necessarily new here, but more so a reminder on those dates. And again, you can see them outlined on this slide as well, and we have a link to the rules below. Additionally, just wanted to mention lastly here that if you're looking for any additional resources related to Part 328, we have some available in the compliance section of our best practices library. So Heather will talk about that at the end of our videos. We always like to remind you of the resources that are available to you on the website. So make sure to keep that in mind and take a look if you're looking for some additional tips and recommendation in addition to the rule itself. On our next slide here, we have some items related to, withdrawal of guidance and joint statements that have been made over the years. And we've discussed these in previous videos, but over the past couple of years, the agencies have issued crypto-related guidance, and they have since withdrawn certain guidance documents, perhaps most notably, which includes certain expectations related to those activities. And the idea here, why we're getting this, is burden reduction. And so the agencies are more so shifting now to support innovation of the banking industry where activities are permissible. And so included within that withdrawal is the establishment of the expectation for advance notice, meaning that the agencies had previously expected advance notice before engaging in certain activities. That expectation has been withdrawn. So while advance notice is no longer expected, the agencies will continue instead to monitor crypto-related activities through the normal supervisory process. Included among the withdrawal are joint statements as well regarding certain risk management practices. So keep that in mind for those of you who are potentially exploring crypto-related activities, potentially considering and looking at that guidance that had been brought up in the past, those specific joint statements and guidance documents that have since been withdrawn. Now, the agencies may issue separate guidance in the future, so we'll certainly keep an eye out on that and see what shape that may take. But for now, know that banks may engage in otherwise permissible activities in the crypto area without the notification or the very specific risk expectations outlined in those prior statements. With that, I will turn it over to Heather to continue.
Super. Thank you, Scott, and hello to everyone. Hope your April has gone well. Scott and I wanted to make sure that you were aware of some changes that were being made to SBA 7A lending program, knowing that many in Wisconsin are SBA lenders. And in particular, two items to hone in on. One being that SBA has reinstated their lender fees. So you'll find a link to that particular announcement. The date itself had an effective date of May 24th, but you'll see on this slide here that the updated fees are applying to loans that were delegated procedures on March 27th, 2025 towards the end of the year here being September 30th. The announcement applies to lenders' annual service fee and also to SBA guaranteed fees and other upfront fees. The revised notice also sets forth some exceptions to when those fees would otherwise be charged. But in essence, what this notice is saying is that those fees that were previously on pause are now put back in place as of the end of March, something that came up after our last video. So we're including it here this month for you. More importantly, I think from an SBA standpoint is the second item on this particular slide. Here, SBA has announced that they have revised their underwriting and lending criteria that had been previously in place for the last several years. And they have released this information in what's referred to as SOP 50.10.8. And you'll see in that particular release that the information is broken down into three different sections, focusing in on the 7A loan program for one particular section and the complementary 504 loan program for another section. There is a combined section, that being Section A, which talks about the core compliance that are applicable to all of those types of loan programs. So for those of you who are engaged in 7A lending, just make sure that you take a quick look at that to understand what the new protocols are with respect to lending, putting some lending criteria back in place. And we also wanted to let you know that the Federal Trade Commission has updated their COPPA rule. And it's not the song, so no one starts singing COPPA here, but obviously COPPA being the Children's Online Privacy Protection Act. And it's been a rule that's been out there for quite some time, last amended in 2013. And there's been a lot of digital changes, a lot of technology changes, a lot of use changes of how we use technology and websites, etc. And so they wanted to incorporate some of those changes into this rule while trying to protect our children from some misuses. So you'll find that the rule itself, just recently issued, has an effective date of June 23rd of 2025, but there is a longer implementation period, so we have a little bit more time for mandatory compliance being pushed out to April of next year for most sections. Very, very high level. I would certainly stay tuned for a future WBA Compliance Journal article, which will lay forth what the changes have been and what the new standards will be. But here we wanted to pinpoint for you where to focus what the changes are. And here we have a new definition for a mixed audience website or online service, again, trying to identify the new technologies and uses that have come up since 2013. And then they've modified several different definitions, as you see here on this particular slide, again, wanting to, in fact, recognize those different use and activities. So we have updated definitions for online contact information, personal information, support, and website or online services directed to children. Another key component with respect to this new rule is they did make a change to record retention for how long someone who is a operator of a website or online service is subject to this rule can keep information about children. And they've narrowed that substantially in that you can't keep that information indefinitely, that now you have to make sure that you're only keeping it for a reasonable period of time to fulfill the specific purpose for why it was collected in the first place. So again, we'll flesh that out in a future more detailed article, but certainly you're going to want to put COPPA on your list of things to revisit with respect to your own policies and procedures as we get closer to those mandatory compliance dates. So as Scott mentioned, it was a short video this month. And, our agencies are still working through the various protocols that they have to with a new administration. So we're not seeing a ton of new agency items, but we're certainly happy to recap those either in this video or in our monthly publication of the WBA Compliance Journal. And we also wanted to make sure that you were aware of the different resources that WBA has for its members. In particular, as Scott mentioned, we have a number of items that we post at our compliance library section of our website. That includes bankers' tools and lenders' tools, a lot of Wisconsin-specific information. And then, as Scott mentioned, we also do cover the federal changes, and Part 328 being one of those, flood being another example too, built with tips as well as the information about the regulation itself. Don't hesitate to reach out and give us a call if you've got any questions about a particular compliance matter or just want to talk through an issue. We're always happy to walk you through either what the requirement may be or to talk you through a particular fact pattern. So with that, we look forward to seeing you on the phones, as we like to say, or if you're going to be at Capitol Day next week, we look forward to seeing you there as well. Otherwise, have a great rest of your April, and we look forward to speaking with you next month in May. Take care.